Okay, so now I'm going to break into the subject of percent change and something that I wanted to let people know, things that go on when there are percents affecting a purchase, right? There are things that make us increase what we pay. Taxes increase what we pay. And discounts, right? When you have a sale, you're theoretically having a discount, and they decrease what we pay. And both of these are from 100%. So you're going to increase to, increase by or from 100%. So you take 100%, and you're going to increase 100% by what it goes up by, right? So we'd say by. Or we're going to decrease it. We're going to take it away from 100% and make it drop down. And there are other ways to do discounts besides sales, but discounts make the prices go down. Taxes in all forms tend to be percents that will increase what you pay. So now I want to get into what this is about absolute and relative change. How much did a value change? Absolute change equals, it's going to be the new value minus the old value. You don't get to choose which order you put it in, and you don't get to always make it positive. We're not talking about the difference between two. We want to know the net change, which could be positive or negative. So it's really what we would call a vector. It can be positive or negative besides having a value for what is its magnitude, how big the number is, what the digits make it say. So this has units of measure. Two big features about it. A, it has units of measure. So if they're measuring something in feet, the absolute change will be in feet. If they're measuring it in dollars, it'll be in dollars. That will stick around. And this value can be negative. And you have to watch closely what the question asks you. If it says, what is the change in the price, and it's negative, you have to say it. If they say, what is the decrease in the price, then you have to say it as positive, because the decrease is now they're saying, I'm admitting it's a decrease, give me the numbers only. I want the absolute value of the change, knowing that it dropped. So you got to watch for that because of double negatives. But predominantly people are always worried about getting the right number. You also have to know, is it getting bigger or strong, bigger and stronger, or weaker and smaller? Is it increasing or decreasing? So you're going to need that when you're dealing with absolute change. Percent change, we'll call that relative. And also we could call it percent. They're not identical. Percent is based on 100, whereas the relative change would be based on a decimal where 1.00 is the 100%. But they do the same job. What they're going to do, they're always going to take the absolute change that you just found. So you'll find the absolute change first and divide it by the old value. Now the absolute change will have units on it. So will the old value. Those will cancel. You will not have units anymore. And then you're going to multiply by 100%. But what's key for a lot of people with this is you take the absolute change, whatever you found, it might be positive or negative, and you must divide by the old standard. You don't divide ever by what you just created. You have to divide by something that I like to say you knew yesterday. How did it change the standard? Not how did it change what it just became from what it just became. That doesn't make sense, but that's what people try to do, because sometimes they just grab the smallest number, or they say, oh no, percents can't be over 100. A lot of these things are misconceptions people have. You must find the absolute change, which can be negative, and you must divide your absolute change by the old existing value to see how you changed away from the old existing value before you multiply by 100. So I'm going to work on 3 examples of this, and they're over here. I grab my calculator in case I want to lean on that. If the average driver's age went from 48 to 56, okay, we can see that the old was 48 and the new is 56, and therefore this is going to be an increase. So this should be a positive change. Well, what we're going to see is the absolute change begins with the new value of 56, and then we subtract the old value of 48, and we wind up with 8. It's positive. Now those were years. I'm not writing them here, but that would be 8 years is the absolute change in this value, right? I'm assuming that, I didn't think 48-month-olds, 4-year-olds are driving around. But this may say years in which that'd be 48 years, 56 years, 56 years, 48 years, and an 8-year difference. So that would have units on it. So I'll put years here. Why? Because I want to show you what happens now when we go for the percent change. We're going to take the 8 years that we just found, that's positive. We divide by the old value. We don't say, oh, which one should I take? You don't get to choose. We also don't get to say, oh, I better take the big one or anything like that. We have to take the old one, which is 48. And we're going to multiply by 100%, and then we're going to round it off. 8 over 48 makes 1/6, and the years will cancel. And when we multiply that all out, it'll be 16.7%. It's 16.6, and the 6's keep on going. We took 1/6 of the 48 to get the 8, and that's how much was needed to get us up to 56. Now this, I want to quickly explain, and I won't go into as much detail as I sometimes do in class. An apartment's rent immediately went from $200 to $1,000, and the quick explanation is if you know about rent control and you know about illegal sublets, then you know this is a distinct possibility. If someone has rent control in New York City, it was to allow people who lived in New York City to be able to afford to stay in New York City. It's highly controversial on both ends, but here's the story. The city caps how much rents can go up, and that's why an apartment might only be $200. It might be a small apartment or whatever, but it's in New York City, where if they can rent it to a new person moving in and making a lot of money, they can charge a lot more than $200, but because it's rent controlled, it's forced to stay at $200. What happens is people then move out of the apartment, but they pretend they still live there. And here's how this all works. They rent the apartment to someone else, and from that person, they're getting, let's say, $500 a month. And then they're turning around and paying the $200 a month. So that person, instead of having to say, oh yeah, I'm a new moving in person to New York City, and here I want to pay $1,000 for the apartment, they find a way, it's basically the black market, but people don't want to call it that, and they find a way to pay $500 for the apartment to this person who then sends the check for $200 to the landlord. Or maybe not even that much. So I have some interesting stories. You can catch me back on campus if we get a chance, and I can tell you some interesting things I learned about rent control through the years. But if they get caught, then they can evict the tenants right away because they're in an illegal sublet, and then the landlord can push the rent up to $1,000. If the landlord's not really angry at those tenants, and he says, look, I got you, I don't want to put you out, but I need to get $1,000 for this apartment, be easier for me to let you stay, but now you got to pay me directly $1,000, or I'll evict you and I'll get someone else in there for $1,000. The people might say, okay, I'm glad you're letting us stay. It's a great place. It was a good run. We'll pay $1,000. How much did their rent go up? So A is the absolute change. And that's going to start with the new $1,000 minus the old $200. And their rent went up, theoretically, $800 per month. Because according to the landlord, it went up $800 per month. You and I might know they were paying $500 to the old tenant who was still signing leases every year. So they were paying $500 a month, so they're going to see it differently. They just went from $500, we're going out of pocket, to $1,000. But the landlord is seeing it go from the old $200 to $1,000. He's going to make $800 more per month from that apartment. Or she, of course. Let's find the percent change. We take this $800, which is a positive number of dollars, and we're going to divide it by $200, which is the old value, and then multiply by 100%. And when we do that correctly, we find that the rent went up by 400%, which then leads to a dilemma that some people think, wait, percents can't go over 100. You can't have more than 100% of anything that exists. Okay, I had an interesting argument with a gentleman. I know I was right, but I didn't really win. A Russian gentleman that I met out in Las Vegas, and he was insisting that he had vodka that was 240 proof, which is 120%, which means 120% alcohol is in that bottle. So it's more than 100% alcohol, which is not possible. I tried once, and he said, no, you don't understand. I gave it one more shot, and he said, no, this is Russia. And I was like, oh yeah, that's Russia, I forgot. So then I walked away. But the idea is, 100% is as much as you can have something comprised of, but the change can certainly exceed 100%. And this rent that went from 200 up to 1,000 actually jumped up by 400% for the landlord. Okay, if you want to look at the problem, how did it affect the people that were paying 500 a month? They went from 500 to 1,000. Theirs went up by 500, right? And they had $500 increase over the old $500 payment. To them, rent went up 100% because they're no longer paying the middle man or person or what have you. All right, one more. Population went from 3.6 million to 2.7 million. So it started at 3.6 and became 2.7. So A, we've got the absolute change. This is going down. We got to get a negative value for this. So the 2.7 minus 3.6 is going to give us negative 0.9 million. And then the percent of change is negative, and it's 0.9, and it's got its million on it. And we go back to the original. The original is the old one that it came from, not what it went up to. So we're going to have to put the 3.6 million here. The words million could be written as million, or it could be written as 0,000,000 with the commas and all that. In either case, the millions cancel, the negative stays, and we multiply this by 100%. And we find out that that's negative 25%, showing that percents can change negatively. But I'd have you take a close look at all three of these and recognize that there is no choice about how you're going to manage this. You can't say, you know, that's 8 years, I got that, but I decided to divide by 56. No, you can't divide by your newfound number. 8 over 48, old number here is $200, $800 over $200, where you get the 4 for 400%. And then on this one, we had a negative value of 0.9 million, so the negative 0.9 million goes over the 3.6 million. If this were done incorrectly, you'd think it decreased by over 33% because you might put it over the 2.7 million, but you're always dividing by the old value. Okay, we're good with this one.